The diamond bracelet felt cold against Maya's wrist as Mr. Choi's breath touched her neck, his words dripping with possession she never agreed to give him. She could feel the restaurant's eyes burning into them, this 62-year-old Korean businessman with his arm around a 24-year-old black woman whose smile was starting to crack like porcelain. What he whispered next would make her question every luxury he'd ever bought her, every promise he'd ever made, and whether she'd just sold her soul for a penthouse view. If you're already hooked and want to see how this explodes, smash that subscribe button right now. You'll need to pick a side before this ends, and trust me, you're not ready for where this goes.
The restaurant staff pretended not to stare, but Maya knew better. She'd become an expert at reading rooms over the past 3 months, at catching the sideways glances and hearing the whispers that followed her and Mr. Choi wherever they went in Seoul. The diamond bracelet he just clasped around her wrist probably cost more than her mother made in a year back in Nairobi, and that thought made her want to rip it off and throw it across the restaurant. "You don't look happy, my sweet," Mr. Choi said, his Korean accent thick around the English words he used when they were in public. His private voice was different, sharper, more demanding. "I give you beautiful things. Why do you look like someone died?" Maya forced her smile wider, the one she'd perfected in the mirror of her tiny apartment before she'd met him, before he'd moved her into a penthouse in Gangnam that she still couldn't believe was real. "I'm happy. Just overwhelmed." "It's beautiful. Overwhelmed." He repeated the word slowly, like he was tasting it. His fingers traced circles on her bare shoulder, and she fought the urge to shiver. Not from desire, never from desire, not anymore. "You should be grateful, Maya. Do you know how many girls would kill to be where you are?" There it was. The edge beneath the silk. The reminder that she was replaceable, that this fairy tale he'd sold her came with conditions printed in invisible ink that only revealed themselves when it was too late to run. She'd met him at a business conference where she'd been working as a translator. Her Korean was fluent. Her father had been obsessed with K-dramas, had made her learn the language before he died, telling her it would open doors. He hadn't lived to see just what kind of doors it would open. Mr. Choi had approached her during the cocktail hour, impressed by her language skills, charmed by her smile. He'd offered her a job as his personal assistant, triple what she was making, and she'd said yes before she'd even thought about what personal might mean. The first month had been innocent enough. She'd managed his schedule, translated documents, accompanied him to meetings. He'd been generous with bonuses, kind in his treatment of her. The second month, he'd started calling her beautiful. Started touching her hand during car rides. Started looking at her the way men did when they'd already made up their minds about what they wanted. The third month, he'd made his intentions clear over dinner at a restaurant exactly like this one. He wanted a girlfriend. Someone young, exotic, beautiful. Someone who could make him feel alive again after his wife had died 2 years ago. He'd offered her an apartment, an allowance, a life most people only saw in movies. All she had to do was be available when he wanted her, smile when he needed her to smile, and never ask questions about the other parts of his life. Maya had said yes. God help her, she'd said yes. "I am grateful," she said now, the words tasting like ash. "You've been very generous." "Generous," he echoed, and laughed. The sound made several diners turn their heads. "I'm not generous, Maya. I'm strategic. I invest in things that bring me value." "Do you bring me value?" Her stomach dropped. This was new territory. 3 months of careful navigation, of playing the role, of convincing herself that this was just temporary, just until she could save enough to start her own business, to become independent. 3 months of telling herself she was in control. "I hope so," she whispered. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. "My son is coming to Seoul next week. From New York. He wants to meet you. He wants to know why his father is dating a black girl young enough to be his daughter." His hand tightened on her shoulder. "You'll be perfect for him, won't you? You'll show him that you're not some gold digger. That you care about me." Maya's throat closed. She'd known he had children, a son and daughter both older than her, but he'd never mentioned them wanting to meet her. Never mentioned having to perform for them, to prove herself worthy of their father's money. "Of course," she managed.
"And if you think you know where this is going, you don't." Hit that like button if you're already feeling uncomfortable, because it gets so much worse. That night, alone in the penthouse that didn't feel like hers, Maya stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul. The city glittered like promises, like dreams, like everything she'd wanted when she'd first arrived in South Korea 5 years ago with nothing but a degree in international relations and hope that burned too bright to be sustainable. Her phone buzzed. A message from her best friend Zara, still back in Kenya. Asterisk, how's paradise? Asterisk. Maya stared at the words. Paradise. That's what she'd called it in her last message. When she'd sent photos of the penthouse, the designer clothes Mr. Choi had bought her, the life that looked perfect through a filtered lens. She started typing the truth, that she felt like a doll in a dollhouse, that every gift came with strings attached, that she was terrified of what would happen when Mr. Choi got bored of her. Then she deleted it all and sent back a single emoji, a thumbs up. The door opened behind her. She hadn't heard him use his key, hadn't expected him tonight. He usually gave her warning, usually scheduled their time together like business meetings. Maya. His voice was different. Harder. We need to talk. She turned. He stood in the doorway wearing the expression she'd learned to fear, the one that said the performance was over, that the masks could come off. I saw you at lunch today, he said, stepping into the room. With that boy. The Nigerian student from your language exchange program. Ice flooded her veins. Marcus. She'd met him for coffee, just an hour of speaking English with someone who understood what it meant to be African in a country that exoticized and excluded them in equal measure. Just 1 hour of feeling human instead of ornamental. He's just a friend, Maya said. We were studying. I don't pay for you to have friends. Mr. Choi moved closer. I pay for you to be mine. Do you understand what that means? I'm not a possession, she said, and the words came out before she could stop them. The slap came fast. Not hard enough to leave a mark, he was too smart for that, but sharp enough to send her stumbling backward. Sharp enough to make the message clear. You are exactly what I pay for you to be, he said calmly. And right now, I'm paying for you to understand your place. My son arrives in 4 days. You will meet him. You will be charming. You will make him believe that you love me. And then, when he leaves, we will discuss your future. Whether you have one with me or whether you go back to your little translator job and your little apartment in Itaewon. He smiled. Actually, I don't think that apartment is available anymore. I believe the landlord rented it to someone else. You did give up the lease, didn't you, when you moved here? The trap closed around her. She had given up the lease. Had burned that bridge because he told her she didn't need it anymore, that this was permanent, that she was special. And now she was standing in his apartment, wearing his clothes, living his life, with nowhere to fall back to if he decided to let go. I understand, she whispered. Good. He walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Maya? If I see you with that boy again, I'll make sure his student visa has problems. Immigration can be very strict about the company international students keep. It would be a shame if he had to leave Korea because of you. The door closed behind him. Maya sank to the floor, the diamond bracelet catching the city lights, throwing fractured rainbows across the white carpet. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. She'd cried them all out weeks ago, in the shower where he couldn't hear her, where the water could wash away the evidence of her breaking. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Zara. Asterisk, I'm so proud of you, sis. You're living the dream. Asterisk. Maya laughed, and the sound was hollow. The dream. Yes, that's exactly what this was. A dream that felt more like a nightmare every day, but one she couldn't wake up from because waking up meant admitting she'd made a mistake, meant going home with nothing to show for her years in Korea except shame and broken illusions. She stood up, walked to the mirror, and practiced her smile. 4 days. She had 4 days to perfect the performance of her life, to convince Mr. Choi's son that she was more than a transaction. That she mattered. The woman in the mirror smiled back, and Maya barely recognized her. Subscribe right now and tell me in the comments, is she a victim or did she make her choices? Because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know. The next morning, Maya woke to find an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a credit card with her name on it and a note in Mr. Choi's precise handwriting, asterisk, buy something beautiful for dinner with Juno. Show him you have class. See asterisk. Juno. His son's name. The man she had to impress, to win over, to prove herself worthy to. The idea made her sick, but she pocketed the card anyway. What choice did she have? She went to the luxury boutiques in Gangnam, the ones where staff bowed when she entered because they recognized Mr. Choi's credit card, because they'd seen her before with him, because they knew exactly what she was even if they were too polite to say it out loud. She found a dress, elegant, conservative, expensive enough to prove she understood quality, but not so expensive that it looked like she was taking advantage. The perfect balance. The perfect lie. In the dressing room, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. Hello, is this Maya Johnson? A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Yes. Who is this? My name is Christine Park. I'm Juno Choi's personal assistant. He wanted me to reach out to you before the dinner this Friday. He has some questions. Maya's hands went cold. Questions? Yes. About your relationship with his father. He's concerned, understandably, about the age difference and the nature of your arrangement. He wanted me to ask you directly, are you after his father's money? The bluntness of it stole her breath. I know. I care about your boss's father. Do you love him? The question hung in the air like a blade. Maya stared at her reflection in the dressing room mirror, the expensive dress, the styled hair, the woman she'd become. Yes, she lied. Interesting. Christine's tone suggested she didn't believe her. Juno wanted me to let you know that he's had you investigated. Background check, financial records, social media history. He knows about your student loans, about your mother's medical bills back in Kenya, about the money you send home every month. He knows exactly why you're with his father. Maya's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the dressing room bench, the phone pressed against her ear, her heart hammering so loud she was sure Christine could hear it. I don't know what you want me to say, Maya whispered. I want you to understand what you're walking into on Friday, Christine said. Juno isn't like his father. He doesn't believe in buying people. He thinks you're exploiting an old man's loneliness, and he's prepared to prove it. He's going to offer you money at that dinner, a substantial amount, to walk away from his father. And the amount he offers will tell him everything he needs to know about what kind of person you are. And if I don't take it, then he'll know you're playing a longer game. Either way, you lose. Christine paused. I'm telling you this because I'm a black woman too. I know what it's like to work in spaces where people assume the worst of us. But Maya, this isn't the way. Whatever he's paying you, it's not worth what it's costing you. I can see it in the photos I pulled of you from 3 months ago versus now. You're disappearing. Get out before there's nothing left. The line went dead. Maya sat in that dressing room for 20 minutes, still wearing the expensive dress, staring at nothing. Then she stood up, took off the dress, put on her own clothes, and walked out of the boutique empty-handed. The sales associate called after her, confused, but Maya didn't stop. She walked through Gangnam with no destination, just moving, just breathing, just trying to figure out how her life had become a trap with no exits. Her phone rang again, Mr. Choi this time, but she didn't answer. She couldn't. Not yet. Not until she figured out what she was going to do. She ended up at a small cafe in Itaewon, the neighborhood where she used to live, where expats and immigrants and outsiders gathered because they were welcome there in ways they weren't elsewhere in Seoul. She ordered coffee she couldn't taste and sat by the window watching people live normal lives. Maya? She looked up. Marcus stood there, his backpack slung over one shoulder, concern etched across his face. I thought that was you. Are you okay? You look, he stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Can I sit? She should say no. Should protect him from Mr. Choi's threats, from the danger of being associated with her. But she was so tired of being alone, of carrying this weight by herself. Yes, she said. Please. He sat down, ordered his own coffee, and for a moment they just existed in companionable silence. You want to talk about it? He finally asked. And Maya, who hadn't talked honestly to anyone in 3 months, who had been performing every moment of every day, broke. She told him everything. About Mr. Choi, about the arrangement, about the son who was coming to test her, about the credit card and the apartment and the diamond bracelet that felt like a shackle. About Christine's warning, about the impossible choice she was facing, about feeling trapped in a cage made of luxury and lies. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every word. "You have to leave," he said when she finally stopped. "Tonight. Just pack your things and go." "Go where?" "I have no money of my own. He tracks everything I spend. My apartment is gone. And if I run, she stopped, remembering the threat about Marcus's visa. "He'll what?" She looked at him, this kind man who'd shown her friendship without conditions, and made a decision. "He said if I saw you again, he'd get your visa revoked. He has connections in immigration. He could do it." Marcus's jaw tightened. "So he's not just controlling you. He's threatening anyone who might help you escape." "Maya, that's not a relationship. That's not even an arrangement. That's captivity." The word hit her like a physical blow because it was true. She was a captive in a gilded cage, and she'd walked into it willingly, thinking she could control the terms, thinking she was smart enough to play the game and win. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. The gesture was simple, human, free of expectations or demands. It made her want to cry. "You do what you should have done 3 months ago," he said. "You walk away. And I'll help you. I have friends, other students, people who've dealt with difficult situations. We'll find you a place to stay, help you get back on your feet. But you have to decide, right now, that you're worth more than what he's paying you." Hit subscribe and drop a comment. Do you think she can really walk away, or is it already too late? Because this next part will shock you. Maya made it back to the penthouse at sunset. The doorman greeted her with his usual bow, unaware that she was planning her escape. She rode the elevator to the 47th floor with her heart in her throat, half expecting Mr. Choi to be waiting for her, somehow knowing everything. But the apartment was empty. Silent. She had maybe 2 hours before he'd expect her to be ready for dinner, before he'd call to check on her, before the performance had to resume. She moved fast. Grabbed her passport from the safe. Thankfully, he'd never taken that from her. Packed a single bag with essentials, things that were hers from before, leaving behind all the designer clothes and expensive accessories. She was almost done when she saw it, a folder on his desk that hadn't been there this morning. She shouldn't look. Should just leave. But something made her walk over, made her open it. Inside were photos. Of her. With Marcus at the cafe today. With him at their previous meetings. Time-stamped, dated, documented with the precision of a surveillance operation. There were also printouts of text messages, her messages, somehow accessed from her phone. Every conversation with Zara, with her mother, with Marcus. Every private thought she'd believed was safe. And underneath the photos was a contract. A real one, printed on legal letterhead. She skimmed it, her hands shaking, the words blurring together until certain phrases jumped out. Asterisk, exclusive companionship agreement. Breach of contract penalties. Non-disclosure provisions. Compensation forfeiture. Asterisk. At the bottom was her signature. Or something that looked like her signature. From the apartment lease he'd had her sign when she'd moved in, she remembered now how thick that document had been, how many pages she'd initialed without reading because she'd been so excited, so grateful. She'd signed away more than she'd realized. Much more. The door opened behind her. "I see you found your reading material." Mr. Choi's voice was ice. "I was going to show you tonight, after dinner. But perhaps now is better. More honest." Maya spun around, the folder clutched in her hands. "You've been spying on me. Recording my conversations. This contract, is legally binding." He set down his briefcase, loosened his tie. "You signed it, Maya. You agreed to exclusive companionship. You agreed not to pursue relationships with other men. You agreed to represent yourself as my girlfriend for the duration of our arrangement. And you agreed that breach of these terms would result in immediate termination and forfeiture of all compensation." Which means, he smiled. "You owe me 3 months of rent on this apartment. 3 months of allowance. And the value of everything I've purchased for you. Unless you'd like to honor the contract instead. This is insane, she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she was calculating. The rent alone was astronomical. The allowance, the gifts, it would add up to more money than she'd make in years. Money she didn't have. Could never have. It's business, he corrected. And you're in breach. I have evidence of you meeting with another man multiple times. Evidence of you speaking negatively about our relationship. Evidence of you planning to leave. He gestured at her packed bag. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to unpack that bag. You're going to put on the dress you were supposed to buy today. I had one sent up since you left the boutique empty-handed. And you're going to have dinner with my son on Friday, and you're going to convince him that you love me. That you're not a gold digger. That you're worthy of being part of this family. And if I don't? Then I'll sue you for breach of contract. I'll ruin your credit. I'll make sure every employer in Seoul knows what kind of woman you are. I'll have your friend Marcus deported for visa violations, and yes, I can manufacture those if they don't exist. I'll make sure your mother stops receiving the money you send her every month, and we both know she needs it for her treatments. He stepped closer. Or you can be smart. You can honor the agreement you signed. You can finish out the year we agreed to. And then, when the contract expires, you can walk away with a generous severance and references that will open doors anywhere in the world. Your choice. Maya's bag slipped from her fingers. The choice. God, he was still calling it a choice, as if she had any power left at all. How long, she heard herself ask. How long is the contract? 1 year from your move-in date. You've completed 3 months. 9 more to go. 9 months. 9 months of this prison. 9 months of performing, of being watched, of having no freedom, no privacy, no self. 9 months of being owned. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth. He'd planned this from the beginning. The job offer, the gradual escalation, the apartment, the contract hidden in innocent paperwork. He'd been hunting her, and she'd been too naive, too desperate, too hopeful to see the trap until it had already closed. I need time, she whispered. To think. You have until Friday, he said. After dinner with Juno, we'll discuss your decision. But Maya... His voice softened, became almost gentle, which was somehow worse than his anger. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I genuinely care for you. I want you to be happy. All of this, the contract, the security measures, it's just to protect us both. To make sure we're both clear on expectations. Once you accept that, once you stop fighting, this can be good. I can give you everything. Everything except freedom. Everything except dignity. Everything except herself. He left her alone with those words, and Maya sank to the floor, surrounded by designer furniture and city views and luxury that tasted like poison. She pulled out her phone, started to text Marcus, then remembered that Mr. Choi was reading her messages. Started to call Zara, then realized she couldn't tell her the truth without admitting how badly she'd failed, how completely she'd destroyed her own life. She was utterly, completely alone. The dress arrived an hour later. Black, elegant, conservative. Perfect for impressing a son who already hated her. Perfect for playing the role of devoted girlfriend to a man she despised. Perfect for the prison she'd walked into with her eyes wide open. Maya hung it in the closet and stared at it for a long time. Then she walked to the window, looked out at Seoul, and made a decision. You need to subscribe right now because what she does next will either save her or destroy her, and I promise you're not ready for this. Friday arrived too fast and too slow. Maya had spent 3 days planning, thinking, weighing her options against the impossibility of her situation. She'd avoided Marcus, ignored his concerned texts, stopped going anywhere except the penthouse and back. She'd been the perfect prisoner, which made Mr. Choi relax his guard just enough. She wore the black dress. Applied makeup with a hand that barely shook. Practiced her smile until it looked almost real. When Mr. Choi arrived to collect her for dinner, he kissed her cheek and told her she looked beautiful, like a proud owner showing off a prized possession. The restaurant was even more upscale than the one where he'd given her the bracelet. Private room, chef's tasting menu, wine that cost more per bottle than most people's monthly rent. And sitting at the table, looking exactly like his father, but 30 years younger and infinitely colder, was Juno Choi. He stood when they entered. Shook his father's hand. Looked at Maya like she was a specimen under glass. So you're the girlfriend, he said in perfect English. No warmth, no greeting. Just assessment. Maya Johnson, she said, extending her hand. He took it briefly, his grip just short of painful. Juno Choi. I'm sure my father has told you about me. Some, Maya said carefully. He mentioned you work in New York. Finance? Investment banking. He pulled out a chair for her, the gesture courteous, but mechanical. I specialize in identifying bad investments and liquidating them before they can cause damage. It's made me very good at reading people, at seeing through. He glanced at his father, attractive packaging to the actual value underneath. The insult was delivered smoothly, professionally. Mr. Choi either didn't notice or didn't care. Juno is very successful, he said proudly. Top of his firm. I keep telling him to come back to Seoul, but he loves New York too much. New York has better opportunities for people who earn their positions, Juno said. The words were aimed at Maya like bullets. Rather than people who, how should I put this, leverage other assets. Maya felt Mr. Choi's hand tighten on her knee under the table. A warning. A reminder of what was expected. She smiled. I understand why you might be concerned about your father's relationship. If I were in your position, I'd want to protect my family too. Juno's eyes narrowed slightly. Protect them from what exactly? From people who might not have their best interests at heart, Maya said. From relationships built on inequality or exploitation. From situations where someone might be taking advantage. And you're saying you're not doing that? I'm saying I understand why you'd want to verify that. Which is why I'm happy to answer any questions you have. She could feel Mr. Choi's surprise, his approval. He thought she was playing along beautifully. He didn't know what she was really doing. Juno leaned back in his chair. Fine. Let's start with the basics. How did you meet my father? I was working as a translator at a business conference. He needed someone who spoke both Korean and English fluently. We started talking. He offered me a position as his personal assistant. And when did the relationship become romantic? About 6 weeks after I started working for him. Who initiated it? Maya paused. Looked at Mr. Choi. Looked back at his son. He did. And you were receptive because? Because I was attracted to him. Because he was kind to me. Because he made me feel valued. Because he was paying you a salary significantly above market rate? That was part of it, Maya admitted. I won't pretend money wasn't a factor. I was struggling financially. He offered stability. Juno's expression shifted slightly. He'd expected her to deny it, to claim pure love, to give him an excuse to tear her apart. Her honesty seemed to surprise him. At least you're not a complete liar, he said. But let's be clear. You're 24 years old. My father is 62. You're living in an apartment he pays for, wearing clothes he bought you, sending money back to Kenya that comes from his account. This isn't a relationship. It's a transaction. And I want to know what you're really after. Juno, Mr. Choi started, but his son cut him off. No, Dad. You invited me here to meet her. Let me meet her. Let me ask the questions you're too infatuated to ask. He turned back to Maya. What happens when he gets older? When he gets sick? When he's not the powerful businessman anymore, but an old man who needs care instead of companionship? Will you still be here? Or will you have moved on to the next opportunity? The question hit harder than he knew. Because Maya had asked herself the same thing, had seen the future he was describing, had known she couldn't stomach it. I don't know, she said quietly. The honesty shocked the table into silence. You don't know, Juno repeated. No. I don't know if I'll still be here in 5 years, or 10 years. I don't know if this relationship will last, or if it will fall apart. I don't know if I'm making the right choice, or the biggest mistake of my life. She looked at Mr. Choi, let him see the truth in her eyes. What I do know is that right now, in this moment, I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to help my mother back home. I'm trying to build something that looks like a future. And your father offered me a way to do that. Maybe it's not the way you would choose. Maybe it's not the way I would have chosen if I'd had more options. But it's the choice I made. So you admit this is about money, Juno said. I admit money is part of it. But it's not all of it. She turned to Mr. Choi, and the performance fell away. No more practiced smiles. No more careful words. Just exhaustion and truth. Your father and I have an arrangement. I won't pretend it's a fairy tale. But I also won't pretend I'm just using him. I've given him 3 months of my life. 3 months of my freedom. 3 months of pretending to be someone I'm not because that's what he wanted. That's what he paid for. And yes, I took the money. But don't act like I haven't paid for it too. Mr. Choi's face had gone pale. Maya. No, she stood up, and the dress he'd bought her suddenly felt like armor instead of a costume. You wanted me to convince your son that I love you. But I can't. Because I don't. I can't love someone who treats me like property. Who spies on my conversations and manipulates my contracts and threatens the people I care about. I can't love someone who gives me everything except the basic respect of asking what I want instead of telling me what I should want. The silence in the private dining room was absolute. I'll honor the contract, Maya continued. I'll stay for the full year because apparently I signed away my freedom without realizing it. But don't ask me to perform love. Don't ask me to lie to your son or to myself or to you. I'll be your companion. I'll play the role in public. But in private, we both know exactly what this is. A transaction. Just like your son said. She picked up her purse. I'll be at the apartment. When you're ready to discuss the actual terms of our arrangement, the honest terms, you know where to find me. She walked out of the restaurant, into the Seoul night, and didn't look back. Drop a like if you're screaming right now, because this story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. Maya made it 3 blocks before her legs gave out. She sank onto a bench in a small park, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. What had she done? She'd just destroyed everything, burned every bridge, sealed her fate. Mr. Choi would sue her, ruin her, make good on every threat. She'd be destroyed. But God, it had felt good to tell the truth. Her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered anyway. What did she have left to lose? Miss Johnson? This is Christine Park. I'm calling because I was in the restaurant. A pause. I wasn't supposed to be there. Juno asked me to stay away. But I wanted to see for myself what you would do. What you would say. Then you heard me destroy my life, Maya said flatly. I heard you find your spine, Christine corrected. And I'm calling because Juno wants to meet with you. Alone. Tomorrow morning. There's a cafe near Gyeongbokgung Palace, Cafe Onion. 10 a.m. He has a proposition. I'm not interested in any more propositions. This one you'll want to hear. Trust me. Christine's voice softened. What you did tonight. That took courage. Don't waste it by giving up now. The line went dead. Maya sat on that bench for another hour, watching couples walk by, normal people living normal lives, and wondered if she'd ever be normal again. Her phone buzzed with messages from Mr. Choi, angry and wounded and threatening all at once, but she didn't read them. Not yet. She needed this moment, this small pocket of freedom before the consequences caught up with her. She spent the night in a cheap motel in Itaewon, paying cash she'd squirreled away from her allowance. It was nothing like the penthouse, cramped, loud, smelling faintly of cigarettes, and it was the most comfortable she'd felt in months.
The next morning, she found Cafe Onion easily. Juno was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking less like the hostile interrogator from last night and more like someone who hadn't slept. Thank you for coming, he said as she sat down. No handshake this time. No performance of politeness. Your assistant said you had a proposition. I do. He slid a folder across the table. But first, I need you to understand something. My father, he's not a bad man. But after my mother died, he changed. Became obsessed with control, with owning things, with creating situations where he had all the power. He's done this before. You're not the first young woman he's made arrangements with. You're just the first one who's called him on it. Maya's stomach turned. What happened to the others? They stayed quiet. Took the money. Disappeared when the contracts ended. One of them tried to sue him for more, and he buried her in legal fees until she gave up. Juno's jaw tightened. I've been trying to get him to stop for years. But he's my father. I couldn't, he stopped. Started over. What you said last night about giving him 3 months of your freedom. About paying for it too? That got through to him in a way my lectures never did. Because it was true. So, what's the proposition? He opened the folder. I'm prepared to pay you the full value of your contract. Right now. In exchange, you leave Seoul. Today. You go home to Kenya, or anywhere else you want to go, and you never contact my father again. I'll handle the legal side. I'll make sure he can't come after you. Maya stared at the check paper clipped to the contract. The amount made her dizzy. It was more than she'd make in 5 years, maybe 10. It was enough to pay off her debts, her mother's medical bills, to start fresh anywhere in the world. It was her freedom. Right there. All she had to do was take it and run. And what does your father get out of this? Therapy, Juno said bluntly. I've already arranged it. A psychologist who specializes in grief and control issues. He'll go, or I'll cut him off from the family business. He's agreed. Barely. But he's agreed. Because of last night? Because seeing his son side with you instead of him shook something loose. Because hearing you speak the truth made him realize how far he'd gone. Juno leaned forward. My father needs help, Miss Johnson. And you need freedom. This is how we both get what we need. Maya looked at the check. Her future. Her escape. Everything she'd thought she wanted. I need to think about it, she heard herself say. Juno blinked. You're joking. I need 24 hours. To make sure this is what I want. What else could you possibly want? He's abusive. He's controlling. He threatened your friend. He has you trapped in a contract you didn't fully understand. What is there to think about? Maya stood up, leaving the folder on the table. I'll give you my answer tomorrow. Same time, same place. She walked out before he could argue, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Because somewhere in the middle of that conversation, she'd realized something. She could take the money and run. But that didn't solve the problem. That didn't stop Mr. Choi from doing this to the next young woman who walked through his door with dreams and desperation in equal measure. And Maya was tired of running. Tired of surviving. Tired of being a victim of circumstances she couldn't control. Maybe it was time to change the game entirely.
Subscribe and comment below. Would you take the money and run, or is she about to do something incredible? Because this final twist will leave you speechless. Maya spent the next 24 hours talking to people. To Marcus, who helped her understand the legal ramifications. To a lawyer from a women's rights organization who specialized in exploitative contracts. To Christine, who turned out to be more ally than she'd initially appeared. And finally, to her mother in Kenya, who listened to everything and then said the words Maya needed to hear, "Baby, I didn't raise you to be bought. Whatever you decide, make sure you can live with it." The next morning, Maya arrived at the cafe with her own folder. Juno was waiting, expectant, probably assuming she'd come to take the money and thank him for her freedom. "I have a counter-proposition," she said, sitting down. His expression shifted to confusion. "A counter what?" "I don't want your money. I want something else." She opened her folder. Inside were documents she'd spent all night preparing with the lawyer's help. "I want you to help me create a foundation. An organization that helps young women, particularly African women in Korea, understand their rights. That provides legal support for exploitative contracts. That offers emergency housing and financial assistance for women trying to leave bad situations. I want to use what happened to me to make sure it doesn't happen to others." Juno stared at her. "That's not a counter-proposition. That's a complete rejection of my offer. No, I'm accepting your money. But instead of using it to run away, I want to use it to fight back. The foundation would need startup capital. Your payment to me would cover that, and then some. I'd work as the director. Use my experience, my language skills, my story. Turn my mistake into something that matters. And my father? He'd be the foundation's first major donor," Maya said calmly. "Public donation. His name attached. A way for him to make amends that's bigger than just one woman, one contract. He wants to control how people see him? Fine. Let him be seen as someone who supports vulnerable women instead of exploiting them." Juno was silent for a long moment. "You realize this would expose him. Expose what he did. People would make connections, ask questions. Yes, that's the point. Accountability that actually means something. He'll never agree to this. Then I'll honor the original contract. Stay for 9 more months. And every single day, I'll remind him of what he's doing. What he's done. I'll be the mirror he can't look away from." Maya leaned forward. "Or he can choose to be better. To use his money and power to help instead of harm. To actually be the man he pretends to be in public. You're blackmailing him. I'm offering him redemption. There's a difference." Juno started to laugh. It was a shocked, disbelieving sound. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most foolish." "Maybe both," Maya admitted. "But I'm done being a victim. And I'm done letting men like your father treat women like commodities. So this is my offer. Take it or leave it." He looked at her for a long time, and something like respect flickered in his eyes. "I'll talk to him. But Maya? If he agrees to this, if he actually follows through, you'll be tied to him in a different way. The foundation will always connect you. People will always associate you with this story. You won't get to run away and start fresh somewhere else." "I know," Maya said. "But maybe that's not what I need. Maybe what I need is to turn this nightmare into something useful. Something that helps the next girl who's desperate enough to sign a contract she doesn't understand." Juno gathered up both folders, his and hers. "Give me 48 hours. I'll get you an answer." He left her sitting there, and Maya ordered coffee and watched Seoul wake up around her. She didn't know if this would work. Didn't know if Mr. Choi would agree, if Juno would support it, if she was making another terrible mistake. But for the first time in 3 months, she felt like herself. Like Maya Johnson, the girl who'd come to Korea with dreams and determination, before she'd learned to perform, before she'd lost herself in the reflection of what men wanted her to be. 2 days later, she got her answer. It came in the form of a meeting at a lawyer's office. Mr. Choi was there, looking older than she remembered, diminished somehow. Juno sat beside him. Christine was there too, and the lawyer Maya had consulted, and several other people in expensive suits who turned out to be from Mr. Choi's company. "Miss Johnson," the head lawyer said, "Mr. Choi has agreed to your terms with some modifications." Maya's heart stopped. Modifications. The foundation will be established with an initial endowment of $500,000 from Mr. Choi. You will serve as director for a minimum of 2 years. The foundation will be independent, with its own board, but Mr. Choi will serve as an advisory member, non-voting, for the first year. After that, his involvement will be at the board's discretion. The lawyer slid papers across the table. In exchange, your existing contract with Mr. Choi is dissolved. You'll vacate the apartment within 30 days, but you'll receive a housing allowance for 2 years while you establish the foundation. All gifts given to you during your relationship are yours to keep or sell as you see fit. Maya looked at Mr. Choi. He met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something that might have been shame. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what I did. For what I've done. This doesn't make it right. But maybe it makes it less wrong." "Why?" Maya asked. "Why agree to this?" "Because my son made me understand something. That I've been trying to fill a hole that can't be filled with money or control or," he paused, "with you. And because you were brave enough to tell me the truth. To walk away from security because it came at too high a cost. You reminded me of my wife. She never let me buy her either." It wasn't forgiveness. Maya wasn't sure she could forgive him or herself for what had happened. But it was something. A start. A chance to transform pain into purpose. She signed the papers. And if this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think of Maya's choice. Drop a like if you believe in second chances for her, not him, and share this if you know someone who needs to hear that they're worth more than any contract, any promise, any man can offer. 6 months later, the Seoul Women's Empowerment Foundation officially opened its doors. The office was modest, nothing like the penthouse Maya had lived in, but it was hers in a way that expensive apartment never had been. They'd already helped 12 women navigate exploitative contracts, provided emergency housing for 5, and were working with lawmakers to close loopholes that allowed men like Mr. Choi to trap women in impossible situations. Maya's story had leaked, of course. It was impossible to keep something like that quiet. The press had been brutal at first, calling her everything from a gold digger to a con artist. But then other women started coming forward with similar stories about other men, and the narrative shifted. Maya became a symbol not of victimhood, but of fighting back. Mr. Choi kept his word. He donated to the foundation publicly, gave interviews about the importance of respecting women's autonomy, and entered therapy. Maya didn't know if he'd actually changed, or if this was just another performance. But the money was real. The help they were providing was real. And that had to be enough. Marcus graduated and got a job at Samsung. He and Maya were just friends. She wasn't ready for anything more. Might not be for a long time, but he was there. A reminder that not all men saw women as transactions. Juno visited from New York once, ostensibly to check on the foundation's progress, but really, Maya suspected, to make sure his father was holding up his end of the deal. They had coffee, and he told her something that stayed with her. Asterisk, you turned my father's money into something he couldn't buy forgiveness for himself. Whether he deserves it or not, you gave him a chance to be better. That's more grace than most people would offer. Asterisk. Maya wasn't sure it was grace. Maybe it was just practicality. Maybe it was revenge disguised as charity. Maybe it was her way of making sure she could look at herself in the mirror without flinching. Or maybe it was all of those things at once, and that was okay. Healing wasn't linear. Justice wasn't simple. And sometimes the best revenge was refusing to let someone else's mistakes destroy you. One evening, as Maya was closing up the office, a young woman walked in. She was maybe 22, African, terrified. She had a contract in her hands and tears on her face and a story that Maya had heard before in different variations. "Can you help me?" the woman whispered. And Maya, who 6 months ago had been sitting in a penthouse wondering if she'd ever escape, who had almost taken the money and run, who had chosen instead to turn her pain into purpose, Maya smiled. "Yes," she said. "I can help you. Tell me everything." The woman sat down and began to talk, and Maya listened, and outside the Seoul night glittered with promises that maybe, just maybe, some people could actually keep. If this story changed how you see survival, courage, or redemption, subscribe right now. Hit that like button if you believe Maya made the right choice. And comment below with one word describing how this made you feel, because your engagement helps us share more stories that matter. This is just one woman's story, but it could be anyone's. It could be yours. It could be someone you love. Share this video so it reaches someone who needs to know their worth more than any contract can define. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for believing that even in the darkest cages, there's always a way to find the key.